Hello, everybody, and welcome to Game Funeral by the Portland Indie Game Squad. We have never done a game funeral before, so let me explain really quick. The Portland Indie Game Squad, or PIGSquad, is a nonprofit platform to help people make games together. And we are going to be hearing from a lot of different game developers about games that they tried to make or started to make or worked on for a long time, but they have decided that those games are unfinished and will always be unfinished. Yes, let's get the hype going. This is going to be really good, by the way. Oh yeah, I guess this is the first time y'all have seen this wild border that Marlowe made. So yes, Game Funeral, yes. A lot of people are going to be talking a little bit about kind of fun memories with their games, explanations of them, things that they learned about them. A lot of people are presenting kind of learning moments. A lot of people have personal moments, either to address kind of themselves as a game developer or things that the games of their past did for them, anything like that. But yeah, everybody who has a presentation to share tonight did such a good job. Everybody's such a great creative force that we will be seeing tonight. So we will be allowing everybody in the chat to ask questions of the developers who are in chat with us this evening. So if you have questions about follow-up for anything that was maybe not covered in their presentations or anything, feel free to ask. And a lot of these people are also retweeting and sharing information about these games on Twitter. So again, PIGSquad is a community of developers, so if you aren't already part of the Discord or following us on Twitter or anything like that, when game jams come up or events come up, or if you're looking to work with people on projects, that's what PIGSquad's for, and this is a great way to get to know everybody. So yeah, I think... Oh, another thing I wanted to say is that nobody will be punished if they finish a game that they say tonight is dead. If we have to have game resurrection, then I'm all for that. And if you want to talk after seeing a couple presentations, if you have an idea for anything that you've worked on in the past and you want to give a game funeral a try, just let us know. Oh yeah, people are talking about in the chat how they have a couple of swears. It's totally okay if you have a couple of naughty words in your presentation. I think actually, strangely enough, we do talent talks as well, where people kind of go specifically over a personal experience or a tutorial experience or something like that. And we do those a lot, and we've never done a game funeral before. And I only think out of like 8 talent talks or something like that, people have asked me if they can swear. But at game funeral, I think everybody just got real formal. You know, it's a funeral, so you gotta kind of clean up a little bit, and you can't do a lot of swears. But we're doing a lot of swears because we're having a lot of funs with our funs with our old buddies, our games that we worked on. So yeah. Anyways, if you do not enjoy said swears, well, not said swears because I didn't just like list a bunch of swears, then avert your senses. I don't know how to say that exactly. There's going to be swears. That's all we got to say. Yes, anyways. My name's Will, by the way. I founded PIGSquad just about 9.5 years ago. PIGSquad is a really cool community, so anybody that is in the chat right now, if you're looking for Game Jam teammates for our current Game Jam that we're running, which is horror themed. Yeah, I guess we're getting pretty macabre everywhere right now. I had no influence on this, of course. If you are interested in working on a game jam with somebody else, we have our horror game jam running right now for summer slow jams. You can go to our website at pigsquad.com, and there are lots of links that tell you a little bit more about our events and everything like that. Here's Game Funeral. We are right here. And there's a lot of information on this page about our horror game jam. The theme is Don't Let It Out, so pretty cool. We just celebrated the kickoff for that last week. And if you are interested in participating in other event styles, then we have lots of stuff going on. On Thursday this week, we have a virtual co-working night, which we call Art Code, where you can join in our Discord channel and share screen and just work on stuff and reach out to other people. It's pretty nice and chill. We also have another Talent Talks coming up at the beginning of September. A lot of people really cool people already recruited for that one. And then we also just put on the calendar a virtual town hall. So I've been asking people for feedback on our virtual events. So we have a form kind of going around. Dylan can link that here at the beginning of this stream and at the end of our stream. Probably takes about 10 minutes to fill out, but if you have any feedback about this presentation, this virtual event, anything that we should keep doing or stop doing or start doing, anything you've noticed about other virtual events that would be really, really cool for PIGSquad to try out, it would be helpful to fill that out. We are going to be reviewing a lot of that feedback and asking for more feedback at the town hall, which will be also extremely chill. So yeah, I think we covered everything. I think the only, oh yeah, another kind of cool thing is we just hit 1,000 followers on Twitch. I think in like March or April, when we started kind of really going for virtual events, we had like 780 followers. So I guess we've been streaming enough and providing cool enough stuff to where people really want to hop in and learn about what y'all are doing. So another reason to kind of encourage everybody to share what you're working on and start getting out there. And if you have any questions about advice for that kind of stuff, just let us know. Our website has lots of communication avenues. You can hit our contact form or email us directly or hit us up on Twitter or anything else. So yeah, reach out and let's share some cool stuff. Another thing I wanted to say is that there are a couple of fun and interesting surprises that I didn't know were going to be part of people's presentations and a part of what Marlowe set up as our overlays for my part of the presentation. So in addition to never having done Game Funeral for the first time, some people took it an extra step and said, let's do some even wilder stuff. So we will be seeing some cool stuff tonight, I think. It'll be very, very fun. Otherwise, yes, follow us on Twitch if you haven't already. If you're interested in sharing your work or want to put yourself out there to work with other people or want to learn more about the community, just participate in our events. And otherwise, I think I'm going to hand off this game funeral to our friend Corey, who is going to tell us a little bit about a game that he never finished called King Dudeman. Everybody, remember, virtual claps, please. Thank you, thank you.
Hey everyone, welcome to PIGSquad Game Funeral. Today I want to thank you for joining me in celebrating the life and development of the one, the only, King Dudeman. This was the first serious game idea I ever worked on. I tried really hard to make it happen for about 4 years between 2010 and 2014, but sadly, it was never meant to be. Now, back in 2010, I was living in Chicago, hanging out with my buddy Jake. We were spending a lot of time in my apartment playing the Scott Pilgrim game, going to Anamanaguchi concerts, and we found out about this little video game called Cave Story that was being made by one dude. And we thought, hey, we should try to do this. Between the two of us, we figured we could sort of just figure the whole thing out. Jake could do art real good, and I could do music okay, and I really knew my way around BFXR. And we both figured that we were probably game designers too. So we spent a bunch of nights sketching concepts and making chiptune music and pixel art and really, really bad design docs. We read up everything that we could find online, but this was pre-Indie Game the Movie, and we didn't have PIGSquad at the time, so we didn't really know what we were doing yet. And eventually, we came up with this idea after listening to a Radiolab episode about the hierarchy of baboons. There was this guy called King Dudeman, and you don't play as King Dudeman, but you're actually trying to defeat him. He's this washed up old hero character, and he saved the world a long time ago, locked up all the villains, and just sort of took over the world. And he's kind of this old asshole now, and everybody hates him. Now for the gameplay, we landed on this sort of reverse Mega Man idea, which is a phase that I think every developer goes through early on. For the combat, we wanted the player to need to be precise and react to enemies. We thought that that would be really unique and sort of a change up from most of the beat 'em up games that we were playing at the time. You would play as this group of villains that you could switch between, sort of like the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game on NES. And in this GIF that you see here is where we landed in 2014, but it took us a really long time to get to this point. And originally, we thought this was going to be a mobile game because at the time, that just seemed to make sense. Everybody had an iPhone, so we figured, target demographic. We used all of our skills and created some great pixel art and these control mock-ups and music and sounds, and we actually had this 30-page design document. Sort of everything worked out in our heads and put down on paper, but we had one really big problem. We had no idea how to actually build this thing. We started asking around, meeting up with friends of friends and coworkers, and tried to get something off the ground, and this went on for about a year, just trying to figure out who was going to help us build this idea that we had in our heads and take all of our art and music and design and sketches and turn it into an actual game. And after a long time, we finally found a programmer, but we pretty quickly figured out that the scope of the game that we wanted to make was way too big. So instead, we decided to try and make something really small first to kind of work everything out. So right after I moved to Portland in 2012, we started getting really serious about trying to actually release something. We made a handful of tiny mobile games and actually launched them on the App Store. Our first game, Grilly the Cheese, was this dead simple infinite runner that was supposed to take us about 3 months and ended up taking us a year, which is still pretty good for game number 1 if you ask me. We made this weird Santa Paperboy clone in about 6 weeks, and then made another game called Don't Eat People, which was sort of our response to everybody trying to make a Flappy Bird type game. But this whole thing lasted about 2 years trying to make these smaller mobile games and building up to what we eventually wanted to do, which was King Dude Man. And after our last game, we had sort of falling out, and Jake and I were back to needing a programmer again. And I actually just gotten a message from my friend who had asked if I had heard about this pigs gaming thing that was happening in Portland, which I didn't at the time. I had been living in Portland for 2 years and was actively trying to break into game dev the entire time, and somehow PIGSquad went completely under my radar. The first event I went to was during Design Week Portland, and some folks were giving talks about running Kickstarters. I was obviously instantly hooked, and at the end of the event, I went up to Will and I told him that I would be at every single event after that. And he was like, "Yeah, cool, man." But then I actually came out to every event after that. So pretty early on, it was announced that there was going to be this big event called Drink and Draw. This is the first Drink and Draw for PIGSquad, and that got us really motivated to try and revisit the King Dude Man idea and make an actual demo. Now, we didn't have a lot of time, so we made this post on a game dev subreddit looking for a programmer. We ended up getting really lucky and teaming up with this guy that we had never met before, and we actually clicked right away. We did some great work in a really short amount of time, and we pulled everything together that we had learned over the past few years, all our design docs and music and art and just everything for King Dude Man laid out, and figured out a way to make the quickest demo to showcase the gameplay and the art style. And somehow this time we actually pulled it off. Now, for those of you who remember the first Drink and Draw event, it went really well. There was a ton of people. We ended up making it an annual thing. We got all this feedback and fan art, and since I was the only one in Portland, I just kept bringing the King Dude Man demo out to every event that I possibly could after that. It really felt like we finally broke through and figured out how we were going to make this thing. Another really fun thing, I bet a lot of you have this shirt in a drawer, or you might be wearing it right now, but what you may not have realized is that's my boy. He's been hanging out in your shirt drawer this whole time. So all this seems great, right? What could possibly go wrong? Well, I got fired from my job pretty much right after my first kid was born. Funny story, I was actually fired over the phone while showing King Dude Man at a PIGSquad event. I'm sure Will still remembers trying to console this guy he barely knew in the Jupiter Hotel party room. Luckily, I got hired at another game studio soon after that, mostly because of the people that I'd met through PIGSquad events recently. But I had to walk away from any side projects because of a non-compete contract. Jake got really busy with work and we sort of just lost touch with Ruben. But it's not all bad news. We had a lot of fun making the demo. It felt so much bigger than anything else that we had made at the time. We learned that making really small games first is super important, and that figuring out what your game actually is can take a really long time. I learned how to make music on an actual Game Boy with LSDJ, which is very cool, and that I should keep coming out to every PIGSquad event that I possibly could. I also learned that sadly sometimes you just have to walk away from cool game ideas. I still love this concept, and part of me will always wish that I could finish it. Oh, and I also learned that non-competes are bullshit. Now, the really sad thing is that my Mac can't even launch the demo anymore. All three of us worked on Macs, so if you can believe it, we never even made a PC build of King Dude Man. Also, all of our mobile games are toast because of Apple's updates to iOS, but you can still find a bunch of our music on SoundCloud. And I think maybe the coolest thing here is that Jake and I got to team up again at Rose City Games to work on a game called Cat Lady, which is not ready to be in a game funeral. So finally, after 3 years as a hobbyist feeling my way through game dev, and a year as a marketing manager at a full-time studio, I joined up with Will and founded Rose City Games. We've been creating our own original games and helping others get their games out the door for over 5 years now. So remember that even though you can't finish every game you start, each one is still a part of your journey, and maybe the real treasure was the unreleased games we made along the way. Thank you so much for helping me celebrate this project. Rest in peace, King Dude Man, and please, wishlist Floppy Nights on Steam.
Save your Fs, because we have a special way to pay respects to all of the games celebrated tonight. So get ready with your Fs in the chat, because King Dude Man, you're among the stars now. This is how we're gonna remember you. Very it's gonna be serene, it's gonna be peaceful. We have games about monkeys, we have games about Mega Man. F in the chat, please. Yes, I'm seeing all these hearts and Fs. It's wonderful. It's incredible. Yes. But anyways, okay, well, there we go. Thanks so much, King Dude Man, and thank you, Corey. Our friend Q is working a lot with games that are typically described as kind of alternative playstyles or alt controller or in-person physical games. So let's see a little bit about what that looks like. And we're gonna just have a quick dinner with Q, all right? So please, everybody, digital claps.
Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you don't know me, I am Next Level Banana, but my friends call me Q. I've been a part of PIGSquad for a couple of years now, and I like to make games that are hard to describe. These are all some of my failed attempts. I think tonight I'm going to settle on, I like to make games that require your body. And that looks like a lot of different things. Sometimes it looks like video games with bespoke controllers. Sometimes it looks like LARPs. Don't knock it till you try it. And sometimes it looks like really strange, immersive-ish, experimental. Sometimes they're narrative obstacle courses. Tonight I want to tell you about one of these experiments. I called it Project OX Delectable. This is hexadecimal if you're not familiar. And OX Delectable was supposed to be an immersive escape dinner party. Yeah, so what in the world does that mean? Well, come with me. Imagine it's the year 20XX, and there's a super cool, super elite new startup in town, and its name is Forma Ventures, and their mission is to terraform Mars. For a start, their motto is, changing the world is just the beginning. So you know this type of company, right? They're very popular, very polarizing, very splashy. One day, you get a letter from Forma. They are recruiting you. I should say here, the goal was to make this like really immersive. Once you reserved your play slot, you would actually get a physical letter in the mail, this one I'm describing now. You would probably also get an email newsletter or two about, fake stuff that Forma is doing. Stuff to set the tone, kind of get you into the setting. And importantly, to establish that in this world, androids exist. All right, so you get this letter, and it explains how the company has this cool, unique hiring process. No, you didn't apply. They don't take applications. No, they use their proprietary machine learning algorithms to mine public data for the best of the best. And they hire whole teams at once. So you and your entire prospective team, 8 people in all, will go in together for one joint interview. And we're not going to do technical grilling, we're not going to do whiteboarding, we're not going to do live coding, no. We're going to do a fancy 8-course dinner because we want to get to know you as people and we value your time. And more importantly, it will be a real-time test of your ability to cooperatively solve novel problems under pressure, because that's the job we're hiring you to do. Sure, okay, whatever, fine. Anyway, to confirm your slot, just sign and return the enclosed NDA. Did I mention this whole thing is a satire of tech culture? This whole thing is a satire of tech culture. Anywho, you sign your NDA, time passes, get to this fancy dinner, and after the hors d'oeuvres, the hostess has an important announcement to make. The hors d'oeuvres were poisoned. But not to worry. Each of the lock boxes on the wall contains 1 vial of antidote, 1 for each of you. And each course of the meal will provide the clues to unlock one of the lock boxes. So if you live to the end of the night, congratulations, you're hired. Oops, too soon. Should your problem-solving abilities come up short, well, this is how we enforce the NDA. Good luck! So dinner starts, and it's 8 courses, right? 1 for each planet. The amuse-bouche is Mercury, so the appetizer is going to be something that's been blackened by a blowtorch on top, right? Dessert, 8th course, is Neptune, so like ice cream with blueberry foam, that sort of thing. Very, very molecular gastronomy, very pretentious, but very good. And each seat has a menu, which has embedded clues for what to look for at each course. Sometimes it's visual, like you have to align the oil drizzles and then the asparagus will write out the code in semaphore, or maybe it's something you have to taste, like the code is on the plate that has basil instead of cilantro. I don't know. In any case, the puzzle is always laid out there on the table, everything you need. So hopefully you enjoy your pretentious food, you solve the puzzles, you get the job, hooray. But if you're more observant, you'll find a secret message hidden in the table settings, like on the placemats, or doilies under the plates, or something. It'll come out slowly, piece by piece, because the sender is afraid of getting caught. You see, it's from a group of current employees, and they're warning you. Once you go in, you can never be free. It's too late for them, but they can save you. Follow their advice, and you will be able to get out. The messages go on to say that your captor, the hostess recruiter, is an android. And so, this is good for you. If you can cannibalize some parts from each of the lockboxes, you can build a tool. If you take that tool and you wave it in front of her face, she will reboot into flash mode, enabling you and the kitchen staff to escape. And if you manage to do this, congratulations, you found the true ending. And that's as far as I got with it. Okay, I made a prequel kind of escape table in the same universe. It was set up to be a recruiting booth because I thought that was really fun to take to events. And I did get to run that a couple of times last year, and it was pretty fun. But that's all I ever did. Ultimately, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had to shelve this project. So, why? Well, several reasons. The first of which is that puzzle craft, the actual making of puzzles, is really hard. It's hard to get right, especially when you're doing something so experimental like edible puzzles. Not a lot of books you can turn to for advice. You know, like, just consider, how do you make sure players don't soft lock by eating the clues before they discover them, right? I never did actually come up with a solid proof of concept food puzzle. I think that's telling. I do still think I could, but it would take a lot of work. Just like iteration, just trial and error, a lot of work. And once I got those settled, then I would have to figure out how to layer in the secret messages so that they're obviously not part of the interview puzzles, right? So they're clearly there, and they're clearly something else. And what is the tool? How do you construct it? But these are the easy problems to overcome. More daunting are just the logistics and legal issues of actually running this thing. You've got all of the questions about how do you legally and safely run an escape room, plus, I mean, really, a pop-up restaurant. And I've got to find a venue for it, right? I can't do it in my studio apartment. And, like, is this going to have to be someplace how often do I want to put this on? Like, is this something I need to rent permanently? And what about alcohol? Do I serve alcohol? Because if there's a fancy 8-course dinner and there's no alcohol options, that's probably going to turn some people off. But if I do serve alcohol, people are going to drink too much and completely obliterate their ability to solve puzzles. And not to mention, alcohol is its own whole bundle of legal questions. And even then, say I got that far, designed the whole thing by myself, I found a place and I'm ready to run it, I can't do that by myself. Even if I played the hostess, which, like, I probably would, at least to start, I still have to have, like, a kitchen staff at a minimum. And now we're talking about paying people. And you start looking at all this and going, what is that gonna cost? We're probably looking at, a couple $100s a ticket at this point. And when you start talking about those kinds of dollar signs, it really limits who gets to play your game. And that is a bummer. Because when you make something that is this cool, you want everybody to be able to experience it. Or at least have the option of telling you no. And, related, I joke about my brand being games that are impossible to demo. But boy, this would be like next level impossible to demo. I just imagine trying to negotiate with PIGSquad, like, hey, can I bring food to this event? I don't want to deal with that. I know they don't want to deal with that. So you've got something that is really hard and is going to take like all of my evenings and weekends to figure out for probably a couple years, and I'm not able to share that with people along the way. Look, I know myself, and I know I need that validation and that feedback, and I don't think I could toil alone in the darkness, not being able to bring it in and, experience it with people. It just wouldn't be fun. I couldn't sustain the momentum needed to get over all of these complicated problems. So I'm gonna let it go. Thank you for the chance to share this story, because I think it's a really good one. And, maybe someday in a world where I have 1,000 Patreon subscribers, I can quit my day job and I can make this real, and you can come to my pop-up restaurant and eat my pretentious food and solve my puzzles. But until then, thanks for listening.
All right, everybody. Clap, clap, clap for puzzle dinner party, don't poison your friends game. How fun. Here's one thing that I did not necessarily consider for Game Funeral is that the chat over the course of the entire Game Funeral was going to be telling the presenters, what is wrong with you, make this game. I don't know if that was anybody's intention, really. But anyways, yes, let's give oh, was it? I don't remember the name of this. I'm thinking of Forma. I'm gonna call it Forma right now. Let's give Forma proper respects. Forma, we are going to say goodbye now. Everybody's giving you the Fs. You were very fun while you lasted, and I'm very proud to have hosted you at a PIGSquad event in the past. At OMSI, was it Mini Maker Fair? No, it was an After Dark. Yeah, that was pretty cool, wasn't it, Forma? Alrighty, cool. And remember, if anybody has any questions for any of our developers, that a lot of our developers are, yes, that was with the balloons, Marlowe. A lot of the developers of these games are in the chat. Uh-oh. I just realized I had a boring thing on screen the whole time. Hey, look, there's Q right there on the PIGSquad website. Oh, gone. Sorry. Anyways, I'm screwing around now. Oh, and now Britt's in the chat. Hello. Great. That was awesome. Thank you so much. It's really, really cool to get the perspective of live events, and I especially find that really, really interesting hosting PIGSquad events, because that's a lot of what we have to consider. I think also jumping over to virtual event style for during the pandemic, as we are doing right now, streaming most of our events. That is yet another challenge. So funny that everybody is suggesting something like VR for the virtual dinner party. Maybe someday, or as I recommended, maybe we find a way to play it on Discord or something like that. Who knows? I think Q was experimenting with Slack bots at one point, so maybe there's a way to secretly message people so that the Android doesn't notice you. I'll have to figure that out. But in the meantime, I would like everybody to welcome our friend Corwyn, who is actually going to be sharing a lot of cool stuff around his process making games, which includes a lot of different games and a lot of different mechanics he's worked with. So please, everybody, a round of applause digitally for our friend Corwyn.
Hi. My name is Corwyn Pritchard. I've been developing games for about 5 years, and today I'm going to give you a little tour of some of the canceled projects that I've worked on over my time as a developer. So this first footage here is of a 2D platformer that I worked on for a while. It was kind of the first large project that I got into, and I pretty much just created a base and then one by one tried to challenge myself to create different components that I'd seen in other games, conveyor belts or collectibles or moving platforms. I created all the art assets myself, except for the default stuff like that floor texture there. I created a lot of stuff I would create after seeing other games, like this kind of trail effect. I tried to make right after playing Symphony of the Night for the first time. Those jump pads I got kind of just from standard, platformer fare, but specifically inspired by the design from Yoshi's Island. I wanted to create a 4-directional firing system like in Cave Story, which is one of my favorite games. And so I would see stuff in other games that I really liked and that I always wanted to put in my own games, and I would try and replicate it. Which I honestly think is a really good way of learning how to make stuff, is just trying to figure out the logic behind the things that you already like, and then just copying it. And for myself, I've found that having a project that you can work on different stuff within that project makes it so you never really get bored. Because if you get frustrated or if you need a break from something, you can go work on something else. If you're having trouble making an enemy, then you can go and work on sound effects. Or, you can go learn how to do moving platforms or whatever it is. which for me, I have a short attention span, and that helped me to keep myself occupied. And this is probably one of the largest projects I've ever worked on. Oh, pardon the naughty word there. I worked on this for a long time because I was able to just jump around and continue trying to copy stuff from other games and try to see what I could do. At this point, I was trying to create dialogue systems and stuff with sound effects. I was trying different types of materials in the material editor and Unreal 4, which is what I use. And I was starting to move closer and closer into 3D territory. I had really rudimentary modeling knowledge from going to Santa Monica College for a couple years. And basically, I was trying to remember everything I could from that. And I was slowly putting stuff together and learning how to, texture and create my own models. This is a really fun little thing here where you move from a 2D axis to a 3D axis, which, I haven't really seen in any other games, so it's kind of one of the more original concepts I've come up with. Except, I guess, like Nier Automata does that a lot. This little ability to examine items and then rotate them was inspired by Phoenix Wright and by Resident Evil. You can zoom in and just kind of check out. I just really like being able to examine 3D objects closely. I really like art assets in games, so wanted to test that out. This is a couple different things that I had made. There's a garbage can that you can kind of shake and look through. I started to incorporate more, interesting character designs and more interesting backgrounds. Destructible stuff. And then I kind of made the leap into animated 3D characters. I tried to conjure up everything I could remember from 3D fundamentals. And I also have a friend who's a really good 3D animator, and she was able to help me kind of work through the beginning stuff. And started to put stuff into a basic template, basic Unreal template. And this is when I started to move away from some of the stuff I had made in that 2D project. But I was really interested in stuff like Kirby 64 at the time, which is one of my favorite games. And it's got that kind of 2.5D axis where you move on a 2D axis, but the camera and the path will kind of move. And so you can explore locations in a really interesting way and do cool stuff with the camera without having to make more complex game. So this is the textured version of that character. And I was trying out edge detection for like a climbing mechanic. That's the debug that you can see there. And I was trying out different expressions, which was very inspired by Mega Man Legends and the cutscenes in that game. I really loved the faces in that game, so I wanted to try drawing some of my own. At this point, I was starting to mix projects together. I was mixing stuff that I had learned from the 2D platformer with the 3D assets that I started creating. And just trying out different stuff. You'll recognize some of this stuff, like the treasure chest there, and this dialogue system. There's background elements from, the first thing I made. And then made these breakable blocks up here, which are kind of inspired by Kirby and Cave Story, that you can just cut through. And wanted to try making some kind of Mario 64-esque levels with just, big moving parts that you could jump around on. So I tried some of that. And this was really just me entertaining, whatever whim hit me. And it was a really good way for me to learn a lot, to just, do whatever I was interested in. This is the crouching mechanic that I made. I never actually made the animation for it, so just squashed on the character model. But yeah, I mean, if there was insight that I could offer from my experience doing all this stuff, it's, make one project that you can just experiment in and move around in and do different stuff and just try what you want in one base project, where you have context for everything. And then, just try and copy the things that you like, because that's all anyone is ever doing is just copying things. That's reductive. There's obviously you add your own flourishes. But so this was I started to move into 2D territory with kind of like pixel art, and I've always been fond of like the NES art style, and I think this is right around when I played through Symphony of the Night for the first time, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and so I was really, really jazzed on the style of that game, and I wanted to replicate some of the stuff that I saw in it. And so I tried these, 3D doors, but mixed with kind of a pixel art style. I tried the little nameplates that show up whenever you get into a battle. And these were all just really, simple assets because I just wanted to, I didn't want to get super attached to an art style. That little kind of hidden tunnel thing was very inspired by Wario Land 4. These things are one of my favorite things that I've ever made. I think we're going to come back right around to them. But these, I think we'll, yeah. I made this boss with a big face, and, he just shoots rocks at you. I just wanted to, again, keep trying to move towards more and more difficult things. Try reflective surfaces, try 3D backgrounds superimposed behind 2D graphics. Yeah, this is that section that I really like. Is that I made these platforms that you would use the switches to kind of rotate around. And I wouldn't say that any of this is totally lost. These are all concepts that I am, totally open and interested, open to and interested in revisiting. And then we're onto some of the smaller projects here. This is kind of like a experiment with fixed cameras like Resident Evil. I tried different types of like zooming like this with field of view to kind of replicate like a film camera. I think the next one is like a track camera. Yeah, here we go. So it's changing between different angles. It's going to track the character around. And then we get this cool shot of the staircase, which I'm sure wouldn't be that fun to play, but I do really like the way it looks. Around this point, I was experimenting with just creating like a wholesale clone of Pilotwings 64, just because it's a fun game that I really like the vibe of. And so, specifically the jetpack, just because I think it's really good for exploration. And so I just put together a dummy level, and one thing I like doing, and it's kind of a bad habit because I really kind of overindulge, but I'll just start a new folder or a new file in Unreal and just start a new game, just to futz around with a new concept, for a day. Which isn't a terrible thing, but you can overdo it, and I have 30 plus project files, many of which could be consolidated or deleted, and I'm sure I'll get around to that eventually. But yeah, this is an original character that I actually am really proud of this character, and I made him for specifically for this kind of jetpack game. At this point, I started experimenting with visual novel stuff in Unreal, just because I know how to use Unreal. And I was trying different like mouth animations and different like changing faces and stuff, like in Phoenix Wright. This is kind of a fun one where I based a game around 2D billboard sprites so that I could draw stuff and still use it in a 3D space. Created these kind of guillotine things, and you explode if you die. There's a little ghost character that I made. When I was testing this, that ghost kind of leapt into the frame, and it actually like caught me off guard and creeped me out a bit. This guy, I really like this little thing. I made this for a jam game that I ended up not making, but this art style I think is one of the more interesting things I've made visually. So I'd love to revisit this. And then there's also this weird like Rails flying game, kind of inspired by a couple WarioWare mini games that I've played. I did this cool trail effect because I like the way it looks. And then also, let's see, yeah, this is the, I made like a kind of a rails shooter, which was again a jam game that didn't end up going anywhere, but I still like the idea. A lot of these are really interesting to me. I'd love to revisit them now that I'm a little better at what I do. And then this next one is one of my personal favorites, which is Sonic Golf, a concept that I wholeheartely intend to return to, because I think it's just a crime that there's no good Sonic Golf game. This is one of the weirdest hills that I intend to die on. And I just downloaded this model from the models resource. I think it's from Sonic the Fighters, and I just wanted to mess around and, you know, make a simple golf course. When it's all fleshed out, trust me, it's going to be brilliant. This was me experimenting with the shoot 'em up layout, and the power-ups are cheeseburgers. I can't remember why. And yeah, so these are all just like little things that I made to kind of test my skills, and I encourage anyone who is considering doing this kind of thing to just give it an honest effort, and don't judge yourself while you do, because I think that you're going to be pleasantly surprised by what you can accomplish. Big thanks to PIGSquad for having me and for letting me talk about this stuff, and I hope that everybody is doing well and staying safe, and
alrighty. Thank you. That was great. Thank you, Corwyn. So many different things going on. Also fun too. Kind of, you know, what game haven't you made? Those are all really cool. I'd love to, I think everybody in the chat here would love to see some of those character designs revisited, and a couple of those mechanics shown in different ways. I mean, you already had quite the playground. How fun. Oh my gosh. So I hate to do this. I absolutely hate to do this, but rest in peace, all of those wonderful prototypes. That's what we're here to talk about today. But you know what? If they came back from the dead, I would be pretty okay with that. If they got up during the funeral, I would be okay with that. I would not gasp. I would rejoice. In fact, these were so fun to look at, and I remember some of these different concepts that you were exploring from past game jams and stuff like that. Especially big pink wardrobe with eyelashes. So wonderful. Awesome. That was great. I think it's really awesome too, especially just thinking about what we have gone over so far. I think it was really cool to hear from all these different perspectives about like what these games are meaning to people, and I want to just kind of like throw that out there again, that if you're interested in presenting about a topic about a game that you've made in the past, or about something that you want to teach others, or if that kind of teaching or sharing an experience has to do with like a specific game project or how you make games or anything like that, I think this was, well, see, look, Corwyn said he's going to cry now because he's so happy with everybody's feedback. So I was just about to say that's kind of the point. I think being able to share this stuff is really special, and I think what we have with the PIGSquad community, of course, we can't meet in person as much right now, or we're not going to, I should say. But once the pandemic is done, really can't wait to see everybody again when we're back in person. And until then, oh boy, am I going to be hitting everybody up for these amazing perspectives, because we're only an hour into this event and these are amazing. So that being said, we are going to hear from one of our friends who we don't see in person too often. Our friend Ted is in Corvallis, and this is one of the presentations that I was talking about that has a little bit of a fun, unique thing that happens at the end of the presentation. So if you could please withdraw your Fs from the chat and begin giving a round of applause to our friend Ted.
Hello, PIGSquad. Happy Game Funeral. I have another project to add to the pile. If I haven't met you yet, my name's Ted Carter. I'm down here in Eugene. By day, I program at a game studio, but by night, I'm a hobby developer. I haven't been programming for too terribly long. I'm self-taught, which will become glaringly obvious in the next few minutes here. But the game that I'm really wanting to put to rest is a project called Screenplay that I started back in 2015 and worked on until about August 2016. So it's been 4 years since I've even touched the thing. So the idea was to have a visual novel engine. It was kind of the heyday of Telltale's Walking Dead series. A lot of the stories that I was hearing involved a partner or close friend sitting alongside them on the couch wanting to watch them play these games. And so the idea was, hey, what if you got the person on the couch involved in the story? I set out making this project knowing that I couldn't deliver on like complex 3D characters, voice acting, animation. So I scaled it back. Luckily, there was already kind of a genre for that, visual novels. I found RenPy. Apparently, I wasn't happy with the scripting syntax of RenPy. So the reason it's called Screenplay is I made my own scripting, like my own script syntax. Oh god, I had I had basically everything going into this script text file, including cutscenes. So like, here's my opening cutscene. You define all these layers by name, and somewhere you're like looking up file names to dynamically load from the resource folder, and then you're defining like time points and like fade and zoom values to just like make a cutscene, which you could easily do with like an animator or a timeline or anything that's kind of in editor. But I didn't know about those things, so everything is just encoded in text and interpreted at runtime. Screenplay was one of my first Unity projects. I didn't really have a lot of experience with C# or Unity as an engine. So the idea that I would make like an entire visual novel kind of engine was unconscionably ambitious. So I haven't really opened this thing for 4 years. So all the animations are way faster than they used to be for whatever reason. One demo project that I made called Urchins was intended to show off all the different things the engine could do. The premise of this game is that you are orphan urchins with psychic powers. Let me see if I can remember the controls. Here we go. So you can have as up from 1 to 4 players text progression that either required every player to press a button or any player to press a button. All these weird little features that I felt like were necessary to make visual novels work in a multiplayer context. So here's like a character selection screen. It supported like a stat system where you could have all these meters and these resources. So my approach to menu systems was also very democratic, where you could vote on what you wanted to do next. If we disagree, it'll bring up a spinner and just randomly do one of the things that you chose. You can specify like a resource to spend on choices. It's the most complicated one. So basically like, Ruth has 4 energy. That means she can put down 4 of these tokens. Gideon has 7 energy. He can put down up to 7 of these tokens. And he can put them, wherever he wants, right? So he can take them off of things, put them on things. Pie chart gets created with proportional areas before it spins. This project had so many weird little features, 2D array of options. You can adjust your stat. Of auto space, the guy in the back, you just can't see at all. Like a secret choice, prisoner's dilemma, timer system. Confusing, ambitious, why? Like why? Why write a visual novel engine? Why write like custom animation code and like custom conflict resolution? Yeah, these animations are out of control. It's bizarre. Like, the whole project is bizarre. You know, I'll find things like this settings file that is just a raw text file that I'm clearly, like, reading in and parsing the text of somewhere because I didn't know what a scriptable object was. I didn't know that there were player preferences that you could write values to that would persist. This whole game is driven by 11 scripts, and primarily there are two scripts happening: Script Manager and Dialogue Manager. And the code itself is just a mess. You can see that Script Manager is over 5,600 lines long. Dialogue Manager, similarly, over like 4,300 lines long. This is not like good maintainable code. There's so much string matching and just the magic values happening throughout the whole code base because I didn't know, for instance, what like an enum was. I didn't know about good like data behavior separation. I didn't know what an animation controller was back then. So if you'll notice, I have like one animation in the entire project. Everything was animated by code, just like tweening things around using timers. This is one of those things where it's just kind of cringy to look back on. If I had done it these days, like I would kind of know what to not spend my energy on. Like, why didn't I use Fungus or some other pre-made visual novel kind of system if I insisted on using Unity? I don't have any answers for you. This is one of my first Unity projects, and I kind of just brute forced my way through so much of it. There's a lot I wish that I had done with this project from an engineering perspective to like make it not so ugly. But also from a content perspective, I do kind of regret not being able to like write a story that I was proud enough of to publish or that kind of thing. Well, hey, I gave people credit, so that was good. Okay, so I have a surprise bonus project that I made basically to help me put this game to rest, and also because I have poor judgment. But inspired by just the whole idea of a game funeral, I wanted to have a game graveyard. So I made a fairly quick Unity project that is ugly as sin right now, but by the time you're seeing this, it should be up on itch.io as well as GitHub. So this project is basically a game graveyard. You make basically it creates grave sites for these different folders that it finds on your file drive, so on your disk drive. So you can basically tell it to visit a cemetery and choose a folder to point it at. So my projects directory happens to have this archive. So if I select my archive, it'll go through and create graves based on what it finds there. So here's my screenplay folder. It'll grab the folder creation date and put it as like the birth date of your project. And then it'll grab just a bunch of random textures. So like, here's this pie chart, some of the characters that I had commissioned for or used free art of from various stories, little icons, just a bunch of kind of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and bury this project. So if I bury a project, it's basically just going to create another text file that it throws into the directory called, in this case, it'll be like screenplay.bones. So it creates this bones file that saves things so that you can return to your cemetery and kind of like see things that you've buried and visit your old projects. So this one's called Screenplay. And then you can say a few words about your project. Like having closure for a project feels a lot like, I don't know, any kind of closure. You want to like gather up all of the pieces of it and, kind of evaluate it and think about what you learned, what was good about it, maybe why it didn't work. So you might type those things here. So cool. So now I've said my piece. Is there a photo I'd like to keep? I can say yes. Go through and grab my favorite picture from this particular project. So I'll grab, here's a character I liked looking sad. So all of the assets go up, come down, and here you go. Here's my project. It's in the ground. It's all buried. This little project allows you to go and like play some of the assets from it as a way of, remembering the good old days with your project too. So by clicking it, it'll find random like audio tracks or sound effects or textures from the project and kind of just pop them up as the ghosts of your abandoned and buried dreams. So there you go. My project is in the ground. Thanks for watching. There's no shame in not completing a project. There's so much that you can make in a lifetime that being weighed down and prevented from making more by the things that you didn't have the time or the motivation to finish, I don't know. It's not productive. So having events like this is really nice. Being able to offload some of that weight, So yeah, have a good one and dev on.
Alrighty. I don't know. Do we need claps? Do we need sobs? That was great, Ted. Thank you so much. It's so nice to hear so many people in the chat talk about how there was a lot to learn from seeing you learn, and also, after everybody is done with their crazed applause because this was so fun. If you want to link your little game graveyard simulator again, maybe that's I would assume somebody maybe might be interested in maintaining being the gravekeeper for everybody in PIGSquad, maybe. Yeah, that was really, really cool. Also a great way to provide a metaphor for being able to say goodbye, close that book, watch everything be the good memory that it was and everything like that. That was really, really cool. So yeah, anyways, Screenplay. We will remember you always because of this wonderful presentation that your creator gave us, and we are so happy to have experienced a little bit of you and your disgusting innards. Which, no, they weren't disgusting innards. You, I feel like it was so awesome to see where that learning process was, and also, a really, really interesting way to see how, Ted, your project related to Corey's so much, where it was kind of like, I'm going to make a visual novel playground, and I'm going to try a genre that I do not know exists right now, or anything like that. That was awesome. So thank you so much. Cool. Well, anyways, we are going to take a little break. There were a lot of awesome presentations already. We have a couple of more for you, but we are going to take a break. So if anybody has questions for any of the developers that already visited the end times of their games in front of us, then you're welcome to ask them questions. I saw a couple people were talking a little bit about hey, I saw this in your project. Can we talk more about that? Or, hey, I'm working on this right now. Can anybody help? This is a great opportunity to do that because we got a lot of people online, and I think we have a lot of really cool community members willing to help. So thanks so much for tuning in for now. We are going to get started again in just about I would say between 5 and 8 minutes, and I'll try to keep it short. I got to get some water. Clean the water I just spilled on one of my tabletop manuals, all that kind of stuff. It's going to be wonderful. I hope I don't have to say goodbye to that too. Thanks everybody, stick around. We will see you very shortly. Welcome back to Game Funeral, where we explore many apparently totally amazing games from developers in our community and talk about why they aren't going to get made anymore, and or our learning moments about them, or why we haven't been working on them for very long, but we probably want to pick them back up again because they're so awesome. That's one thing I think a lot of people are learning right now. Yeah, I think... Crap, what was I just going to say? I wanted to emphasize super quick that while we're on break, we flashed through a couple of tweets with cool things going on. One of them is a game jam that we are in the middle of, which started on the 13th and ends on the 30th of this month. So there are still 12 days left to go. That includes 2 full weekends. So if you're interested in joining the game jam late, you are welcome to. You can find more information about that on our website. It's pretty easy to navigate. You can go to our different events and go to Summer Slow Jams, or see our regular events calendar, which talks a little bit about what is coming up. We actually do not quite yet have the showcase date listed for this I almost said Game Funeral. The headstones are getting to me now. For this game jam, the horror game jam. That of course will be after the 30th, sometime in early September. We will be playing through everybody's horror games. So, as I've been saying, everybody jump scare me, woo. I'll take it. I'll have a heart attack by the time we're done playtesting all those games. But anyways, if you have any questions about how to participate in the jam or anything like that, you can go to our website, and there's a lot of information here, not only about the events, but about ways to connect to the community. If you hit the community tab, there's a lot of information about what's going on here with like joining our Discord. Our Slack is not as active anymore as our Discord, so I'd probably recommend joining the Discord first off. We have a Twitter, and we really like retweeting people's projects. If you tag us and you post screenshots or whatever else, requests for teammates, all that kind of thing. We do have a newsletter if email is the way that you are most commonly pinged, and we do a newsletter probably once every 1.5 months or something like that. So if that is the way to get on your calendar, if you are interested in participating in more events and hanging out with us more, then that's a good way to do it. You can also actually subscribe to our Google Calendar on our website, which just adds our calendar to yours. And then we will probably I need to ask everybody's permission. I always forget to do so before the event. But I'll need to ask for everybody's permission to get these Game Funeral videos uploaded to the PIGSquad YouTube account. There's actually a lot of really, really cool stuff up here, including some workshops on the basics of Unity that we just hosted in May. We have our April talent talks up here about a lot of really cool topics. We haven't uploaded the ones from this month yet, which I think was just last week. A lot going on. Yeah, anyways, a lot of cool stuff going on. I would recommend checking it out, especially if you are having fun now. So yeah, I think we're gonna get right back to it. We are going to next hear from our friend Cesca about some of the games that she worked on, and I believe this will explore her thesis project, which, spoiler alert, is probably going to be put to rest in this event. So let's please give a virtual round of applause to Francesca.
Hi everyone. Wanted to say a big thank you to PIGSquad for letting me participate in the Game Funeral. I think this is such a cool event. I'm really excited to participate. So really quickly, just to give a brief introduction, my name is Cesca. I'm primarily a game designer. I run the indie studio Contigo Games. I teach introductory game development courses with Code Coven. I am, as of recently, now a game designer with Fulbright. And I hold an MFA in game design from the New York University Game Center. And this is my dog Olive, who is really cute. So here are some of the recent things that I've worked on that I've actually finished and shipped. So these are projects that you might have seen around, but we're not here today to talk about finished projects. We're going to be talking about a very unfinished thing that I worked on about a year ago. And yeah, let's jump into it. So today we are going to be talking about a project called Clutter. So just some context really quick for this project. So this was about 1 year of development, but with the additional context that at the time I was juggling a full course load of other classes in graduate school, and also continuing development on my independent game Starcrossed, and also had a full-time job because NYC is not cheap. But also that this was my first truly solo development project, working in game development, that lasted more than a couple weeks. I've done a lot of smaller projects on my own, but this was the full sort of like longer, big scale thing that I had ever done entirely on my own. And I worked on this as my MFA thesis at New York University. And I think that context is also important. I'm going to get into a little bit about why later. Let's talk about what this game is. So this is Clutter. It's a contemplative narrative game about memories, the sentimentality of objects, and moving forward into the future. So the plot premise is that this character named Austin is moving in with her partner, and there's just a few like scattered items left to pack around their apartment. So they're all personal belongings from her past. Each has its own unique story. And the player is asked to observe these objects, discuss them with your partner, and then decide the importance of each object. So you're ultimately choosing to either keep or discard them. And I really wanted the player to think about, are these items important for Austin's future? Are these things that I want to take with me? Are these memories valuable and important? So it's really just like a thought-provoking sort of game. So I'll play the trailer here quickly just so you can see it in action. Yeah, so as you just saw, so Clutter is a dialogue-based visual novel primarily, but it's presented in this sort of like 3D point-and-click adventure sort of format. So you're actually navigating this physical space of Austin's old apartment, and like picking up and observing these objects. You can talk about them with Marie, who is Austin's partner, and ultimately you're deciding if these are things that are important to you as a player, to Austin as a character, or to this relationship as well, and kind of getting Marie's context on all of that. So let's talk about why it died, or why it's in the game's funeral. So I think there were 3 primary reasons, and I'll kind of dive into each of these a little bit more. But the first one is that I was working on a really personal game in a very stressful academic environment. So I'll talk a little bit about what that was like and why this wasn't the best situation to be working on a project like this. The other thing, as I said, this was my first like big solo project, so the lack of teammates really affected my motivation to work on the project and my ability to work in a way that, encouraged me to do good work at all. The third one is that I really didn't have a vision of what I wanted to make. I didn't have a plan going into this. So I'm going to talk about this one a little bit first. And a big part of this was that the environment that I was making it in at the NYU Game Center. So the approach to game making at the Game Center is extremely iterative. And I'm absolutely a designer who relies on prototyping and playtesting to really like convince myself that what I'm making is a good idea. So I went into my thesis with that sort of like highly experimental attitude, and I had no idea what I wanted to make. I really just started like prototyping mechanics and seeing what I enjoyed and what I thought was interesting, just to really see if any of it would stick. So I did this for about 4 months, right? And when you're in an academic year, 4 months is a long time. And I still really had like no idea what I was making. So Clutter was originally called Stargirl. That was sort of the work in progress title. So it was this diorama hidden object game where the player rotated around the scene and clicks on objects to observe them, eventually finding a star which leads them to the next scene. So these dioramas told a story of a woman who had just left her partner and was living alone in a small room in New York City. In my head, it was more of a story of like self-rediscovery after a breakup, and less about the actual loss of the relationship. It was about finding things in a character's life that belong to her. So as the player learns about her, she's also rediscovering herself and who she is independent of her former relationship. And right now I'm just showing the various like prototypes and sort of builds that I made as I was kind of experimenting with this concept. And like, it was meant to be sad and a really like melancholy kind of story, which I thought would be like so dramatic and touching and like really relatable when people played it. But there was like one really big problem that I did not foresee. Problem is that I was already really sad. So I was like being in grad school, living in a really expensive city, and being in the middle of trying to make this big like career pivot. I had previously been working in the industry in like community management and production type roles, and I was trying to re-steer myself into being a game designer. So I was making this big shift. I was spending a lot of money to do it, and I was working way too hard, but also felt like I was never working hard enough. So I was constantly dipping in and out of this state of like constant burnout. So you take like me being really depressed, working really, really hard on a somewhat depressing game. And it meant that I was just like, I was sad all the time, which was really awful. It was not good. It was really, really bad. And I think I didn't realize until like after I had this whole experience working on this game. So this escalated even further because I was working by myself on this project. So I was constantly alone with my thoughts. The game became way too personal because it was built entirely out of my own experiences. And I had to spend a lot of time just thinking about the emotions that I was having and how I wanted to portray them through gameplay and through narrative. So like, ultimately, I think, yeah, if I had finished it and released it, I think it would have been a really honest and authentic game exploring these feelings, because it's exactly what I was going through at that time, this idea of like self-rediscovery and like thinking about my future. But honestly, I wasn't willing to destroy myself to get to that point with the game. So here's the first big thing that I learned. So I need to be mindful of the content that I'm creating and how it affects me. I just found that like maybe if I had worked on this game at another point in my life when, I wasn't as closely living these like negative feelings that I was putting into the game, then it probably would have been fine. But I just found that I had to be conscious of how what I was building really affected me in my day-to-day life. So the game completely pivoted after I sort of had this realization of like, sad Cesca, sad game, just like not good. So the game totally changed into this more like optimistic and like gentle exploration of rediscovering yourself. So ultimately the game ended up being about, people and about relationships, as the original one was. But it's kind of shifted to be more about pivotal moments in our lives and the unnecessary things that we hold on to, both the physical objects and also the emotions. So the story and characters are fictional, but they still draw very heavily from my own experiences. I kind of feel like both of these characters are sort of like two halves of me, and I was really trying to play on those like negative feelings that I was having working on the game before, and the more positive approach that I was trying to take both with my game development and with my life in general. The second thing that I wanted to talk about was like solo dev, which I know works really great for some people, absolutely did not work for me. So this is something I said to myself at the start of this project. I was like, I can totally, make a game by myself for a year, and this is totally a good idea. Yeah, it's gonna be great. And I was like really, really confident that this was gonna be so cool, and I had all the skills, and it was gonna be fine and dandy, right? And I think like on one hand, working solo made me feel really powerful. So I was responsible like for my code base, my task management, my time. And when I got stuck, like I really had to figure out how to get unstuck. And like because of that, my like, more technical development skills really grew like exponentially, which was great. But then I would hit a roadblock that I couldn't figure out, or like lose sight of what I was making and like why I was making it. Like, hello, like burnout. It was awful. And then I would just like stare at my computer for hours, and I didn't have a teammate or, someone I was working with to really like help me get out of that rut and help me problem solve. But then like someone would playtest my build and it was cool, and then I was like, oh, I'm so great and clever, and I'm so good at this thing that I'm doing, which is making games. And then like, later that day, like I would like, be crying at my keyboard, and my partner would come home and I'm about to delete my repository because everything is garbage and I'm garbage and what am I doing with my life? So it was just this like constant up and down of like, this is great, this is the worst, this is great, this is the worst. And it was just like, it was a lot. And I think that's why ultimately I, have decided for myself that probably not going to engage with, other long-term solo projects in the near future. It was a lot. It did let me, I tried to find humor in my failure to sort of figure out how to move forward and really try to like, especially after I pivoted the game from being about a breakup to about like, moving in with your partner and like building a shared future together, my outlook on actually working on this game became a lot more positive, and I tried to be more, playful and also like forgiving of myself, right, and my lack of skill or knowledge at certain points in the process. So another thing that I learned is that I really need a producer, and I also need frequent collaboration to actually get things done. So I thrive in communities and teams, even though like I'm a super duper introvert. I have very little social energy, but the way that I work is highly collaborative. Like I've since worked on lots of small solo projects, but I don't think I'll ever take on an entirely solo like long-term project again, just because I didn't enjoy it and it didn't work for me. I also think that producers are severely underappreciated in games in the tech industry. And every chance I get, I just want to say that like games ship because of producers. I have learned that I can be someone else's producer. I'm pretty good at it, but I cannot be my own producer. It just doesn't work for me. So that was a valuable skill to learn. As a short-term solution for needing collaboration in my day-to-day like development process, I turned to Twitter a lot just to like share my experiences and see that, you know, other devs are experiencing the same challenges and feelings with their games. And I also did lots of playtesting and just seeing people, you know, interact with and enjoy my game. And I also joined a couple like dedicated Discord servers that were for game makers to share their projects and like get feedback. So that was really valuable for me as well. All right, video game grad school. It's absolute chaos. But just these were some of the things that I was feeling as I was like making a game in this environment. So the first thing is like, this is the most I've ever paid for anything in my whole life. That's very stressful. Everyone is better at this than I am. I'm surrounded by so many talented individuals who are incredibly, you know, they're just incredible at everything that they do. And I feel like I'm struggling to keep up. And, you know, I'm both inspired, but also extremely intimidated by them, right? I only have access to these resources for 2 years. This is a 2-year program. And after that, I'm out in the big scary world. So I better run myself at 100% constantly and do the most work that I possibly can, right? Also just having an existential crisis every 20 minutes. So this was not a good place for me to be working on a super personal project with like kind of dark themes. So I was already stressing about the future of my career and job hunting. And this was just like, I didn't want to force myself mentally to be in a darker place than I needed to be, right? And I do want to say that I'm like eternally grateful for my experience at New York University. So the Game Center's community is incredible, and there's so many talented and amazingly kind people who really like stopped what they were doing to help me. And I absolutely appreciate that. But I think the flip side of working in this, like, you know, very talented, very fast moving environment was that I had a lot of very frequent imposter syndrome. And I think that's, you know, very worth acknowledging and talking about. So a way that I coped with this is I learned that I really need to define or like create my own definition of success. So it's like my goals and my ambitions in my career are unique. So defining success, I believe, should be a personal thing as well. So I've tried to come back to this project multiple times, and it really just like hasn't happened as much as I've tried. I tried like bringing on some other folks to work on it with me, some collaborators. I submitted it to QGCon, which is a great event in Montreal. And yeah, and I was like, if it gets accepted, I will finish it. So it got accepted, which was great. Yeah, and I was just like, okay, like this is happening. I'm going to work on it. I started making a Trello list of things I wanted to update and improve and fix. And then COVID happened, so the event was canceled. And I'm really sad that the event didn't happen because QGCon is one of my favorite events of the year. But at the same time, I had this like intense feeling of just being really relieved that I could shove this game in a closet and not think about it again. So I think that was really the moment where, you know, I realized that there was too much like struggle and sort of negative feelings associated with this project that I really didn't want to come back to it. And it presented me with a huge challenge, and I think I learned a lot about my own work style, and I improved my skills tremendously because I had to figure things out. The mentors and friends who stepped up to help me were incredibly patient and kind as I struggled through working on this game. And I'm really grateful for the experience, but I think it just wasn't the right time to work on something like this. And when I think about that time in my life and how exhausted and frustrated I was, it makes me not want to come back to this project. And I fought that for a very long time, but now I think like I'm ready to let it go, and I want to take what I learned and all of the skills that I improved and apply it to new projects rather than force myself to sit down with this thing that I don't really want to work on anymore. So if you look at the itch page for Clutter, it says it's coming out late 2020. It's not. I'm done with it. I'm going to go work on new games with new people. And it took me a really long time to really come to terms with that. But I think that's what's best for me and also what's best for this project. Because I think you can absolutely tell if folks are working on something that they're not passionate about. So again, big thanks again to this like games funeral event and to PIGSquad for letting me give this presentation and come to terms with a lot of the complicated feelings that I had. And I hope that sharing this experience will also help other developers acknowledge when they need to let go of a game and maybe start over fresh with something new. Thank you.
Alrighty, clap, clap, clap. Yes, that's what I like to see. Cesca, thank you so much. As Cesca mentioned in the chat, she is going to be moving to Portland sometime soon. So that is why she is saying that this is potentially too real of an introduction to her. But I don't think so. Thank you so much for sharing all that. And thank you so much, Clutter, for providing the context in which we can talk a lot about learning about ourselves and being emotional and being able to approach trauma in interesting ways and in ways that we do not think to do so, including saying, I'm not going to finish this project. I think, yeah, thank you so much. In addition to all that, I should say, very good looking game, very fun concept. Even if you feel you didn't really have the idea of where it was going or anything like that. And of course, a lot of creative projects carry a lot of burdens based on things that happen to you during those projects or because you're working on it solo or anything like that. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you so much, Clutter, for bringing us this wonderful conversation. Yeah, I think there's a lot to chew on in there, and yeah, Cesca, if there's anything else you want to say in the chat, or if anybody wants to ask Cesca anything, then she will be there. But until then, I think welcome to a new community member. We'll definitely see you in person. Oh yeah, I guess you can see on the screen here that this is what PIGSquad typically looks like. We actually probably only did streams probably, I don't know, once every 3 months or something. We would sometimes stream showcases for fundraisers or for like our horror game marathon that we do in October, but this is typically what a PIGSquad event looks like. So I don't know, maybe even presenting some of these game funeral presentations online has provided the appropriate barrier for people to be able to open up a little bit about these things. But again, a reminder that it's really cool to hear from everybody's perspective, and I think everybody has offered something super unique, and I think it's really helpful to know that there are people here in the community who are making games or not making games, or who are learning how to make games, or who are interacting with people in this context for the first time, can know so much about the creative process and can learn from things and move on. So yeah, anyways, yeah, as Corey just said, next time we see each other, everybody who's part of this game funeral and beyond, we should just get that beer at the Lucky Lab and just sit around and get our arms stuck to the table because it's gross in there, and listen to the microphone blare into our ears because it's not set up correctly and all those kinds of things, One day at the Lucky Lab, and we'll see you there someday, Cesca. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think a really, really cool introduction to speaking with you, and it encourages me also that I think you'll like PIGSquad as well. So awesome! Thank you so much. We have another presentation. It's funny. There's a lot of visual elements and a lot of thematic elements tying a lot of these presentations together. And I saw the Clutter photo of the booth style idea, and it funny enough immediately made me think of the arcade cabinet setup that our friend Mo was working on for a while. Mo has been with PIGSquad for a long time, since almost the very beginning, and she was working on an arcade cabinet called Queertastrophe, and we haven't seen that game in a little while, and we are going to learn a little bit about why. So everybody, please give a virtual round of applause to our friend Mo. So we can, yes, 1, see her quarantine mullet, and 2, learn about her game. Thanks so much, everybody.
Hello from my living room. My name's Mo. Today I'm going to talk about this arcade machine behind me called Queertastrophe. Let's just dive in. First off, Queertastrophe is a game where you are that little blonde character with glasses and you're trying to get drinks from the bar and bring them to cuties while avoiding your exes. It was based on real life. Originally I built it in GameMaker, and then I tried again with Construct 2. Rebuilding things was a common thing that I would do in order to learn. I did that a lot when I started off game making. I would make a game and then I'd rebuild it using another tool. I didn't know how to program back then. I drew the graphics with a mouse, and I just wanted to get something done so I could see if it was possible. And it worked. Like, it was not perfect. It was barely playable. It had a lot of bugs, but it was a proof of concept. I knew I could make games. So I took this game and I uploaded it to GameJolt. And it's been there for over 7 years, and it has a lot of plays and a few reviews. The important thing to me is that some of the reviews were what I exactly needed to see. Like, this one person is saying it's the first and only game that popped up when they searched for queer. Now, if you search for queer on GameJolt, there's more stuff, but I was trying to just get things out there because I wasn't the only person looking for queer games at this time. And that felt really good. And it felt like I could take this further. Like, I could do more with Queertastrophe. So I built an arcade machine. Because it's an arcade game, like, you can't beat it at the end. It gets increasingly harder. It was inspired by arcade games. So I got some power tools from the tool library, and I used them inside my studio apartment, which there's, other ways to use power tools, like outside, which is safer, but I didn't. Anyways, at the end, the product was held together with duct tape. You can see in that corner picture, there's like a mouse that's taped to the top. That's the controller. There's duct tape to keep the door on. It's very short, which surprisingly made it more accessible, which was cool. To children and for folks who needed to sit down and what have you. But it was still very much a version 1. Like, I'm not great at building things. I just like to do it. I got to take it to an OMSI event with PIGSquad where a lot of people were confused by it, and that makes sense. I also tried to change the controls of the game a little bit to work in the arcade format. So originally you used the keyboard to move the character around, and because I really like rolly controls, I found this like old rolling mouse ball, and I used that as the controller. So then in the game, the character follows the mouse movement instead of a keyboard input. And also I wanted a button because it's an arcade machine. Arcade machines have buttons. I didn't have a lot of real reasoning behind my choices, or I just went with what I've seen before. So in order to have a button, I needed the button to matter in gameplay. So you then had to push a button as you arrived at the bar in order to get a drink. But the timing of that was terrible and created this bug that makes the game pretty unplayable. You have to know to hit the button at the exact time as you're approaching the bar in order to get a drink. So it could use a little bit of revision. That's real. I did update some things based on feedback that helped teach me a bit about game design. For example, I added bubbles to the characters, personal space bubbles, so that you can see who needs a drink still and who's received a drink. And that was like a nice piece of feedback where I was like, oh, you need like visible progress. So like when you go and get a drink, you can also see like a $sign floating up when you successfully get a drink, because the drink itself is so small. And if you give someone a drink, little hearts appear, but they're pretty small. So it's just a general lesson in visible player feedback. So I decided I needed to rebuild this machine, and luckily I was offered some help by my friend's dad, who helped me just literally take the whole thing apart, rebuild it with a lot more infrastructure. We took that mouse on it and we stuck it underneath and cut a little hole, so it's not just a mouse on top of a board, it's instead underneath. It looks a lot classier. We added a little button, and the button literally just pushes down onto the mouse's button, so it's not wired up, it's just positioned in the right place. Again, I don't know how to make arcade machines, so I faked it. But it was coming along. Like, I was watching this game really grow up and evolve into more than it had started. And it was looking pretty good. I hired a friend to paint it, and here she is blow drying it because I guess she needed the paint to dry faster. And here's a picture of my friend and his small dog inside the machine because the machine is empty. It doesn't have hardware in it. That's when we kind of come to the death of Queertastrophe. And it's so close. Like, I can see the drawer in my desk over there, and that's where there's a Raspberry Pi, a little computer. I can just put the game on that, and I can plug it in to this guy, and then I'll have the game in this arcade cabinet whenever I want to play it. So when someone comes over, not like anyone's coming over right now, but you know, someday in the future, someone might come over after COVID. They could be like, oh, you have an arcade machine, can I play it? And I'd actually be able to say, yes, you can. Right now, or pre-COVID, whatever, when someone was like, oh, you have an arcade machine, can I play it? I would have to plug in my laptop to the mouse and to the monitor that's stuck inside that arcade machine, and I'd have to navigate to Game Jolt or to wherever to play the game. And it's not really how I envisioned this. Like, I envisioned this as an arcade machine that I could leave at a coffee shop for a week so people could play it. And it's so close, and I'm not going to get there, and that's okay. I mean, maybe I'll get there. I'll keep telling myself maybe I'll get there, but I really probably won't get there because I'm doing other projects that feel more relevant and more important, both as something to give to the community and as something for me to make for myself. But yeah, I guess I can pick up my computer and show you how janky this setup is. I've also never screen recorded before. I'm sitting on the floor, like, with the couch as my table, so we're gonna just be very careful about moving everything so I don't break this mic that I borrowed. Anyways, this is the machine. The door fell off like forever ago, so I put a little screen up, a curtain, when I realized that I was gonna have to talk about this, and inside the curtain, I don't know if you can tell, but it's where I store my other video games. It's literally just like a PlayStation and some Switch games stored under there. So my game is now a corpse that holds other games that I play instead of working on this game. If I were to pick it back up, the things on my list are: 1, get that Raspberry Pi up and going, like it's not that hard. 2, probably remake the game for a 3rd or 4th time in Unity so that it can function better. I mean, there's so many bugs. If you get past the first couple levels, it'll still like skip funny. It doesn't track your points like properly. The movement of like approaching the bar still bugs me so much. I would also replace the monitor because it's a really old Dell monitor, and I think I could just like find a nicer, lighter, probably expensive monitor that would plug into the Raspberry Pi. That way when I schlep this around town, you know, the day that ever happens, I can do it lightly and it would be nice. But even though I probably will never finish this, and this is like this awkward piece of furniture now in my home that reminds me of where I came from, it still feels good to have it. Like, I want it to work someday. That would be cool. But it's so low on my priority list compared to everything else that I don't think that will happen. I learned a lot from it. I am grateful for it. And I hope it rests in peace / rests in my living room for a long time to come. So, yeah. Thanks, Queertastrophe.
Yes, thank you, Queertastrophe. Everybody, a round of applause, please. Oh man, I have many different things to say about Queertastrophe. I have seen Queertastrophe from the very, very beginning, so it is very interesting to see this full circle. And I also like, I mean, I'm not saying that I like doubt, but I'm liking the doubt around how Queertastrophe could come to a new state of being. I think this is less of a funeral and maybe more of a just kind of like mission statement around reincarnation or something like that. But no, that's awesome. It's also very, very interesting to hear a lot of the context around how you made your decisions. And I remember Mo seeing, Queertastrophe kind of grow up, like you said. I thought that was a really, really cool way of putting it. And I definitely do remember a lot of those details about how you talked about getting it together and the upgrades that were made at all the different events you showed it at, because that's another wild feat that you were able to perform with Queertastrophe 2, is just like how many times you brought it out and how many people played it and everything like that. So Queertastrophe, if I never see you again, thank you for everything you've done. That was great. Thank you so much, Mo. How fun. And yeah, do let us all know if you do continue that in some way. Awesome. Thank you so much. So we're going to start, we're going to get a little silly. I believe our friend Brian made a game about soup and then decided it might not be worth making anymore. I will give you, there's another hilarious part. I will give you a quick warning for those of you who are wearing headphones. Does anybody know what Zoombinis are? Can I get recognition of Zoombinis in the chat? They are little blue characters. I believe they have springs under their heads. Okay, we're seeing a couple of yeses on Zoombinis. Okay. So, so once you see the Zoombinis come up in this presentation, this was a little hard. Oh, the pizza puzzle in the bridge. We literally talk about the pizza puzzle in the bridge here. Here we go, Zoombinis time. But when the Zoombinis come up, please note, headphone wearers, that the audio isn't balanced very well, and while hilarious, the Zoombinis will scream your ears off. So anyways, oh yes, and Brian is here in the chat, so if you have any questions for him or anything like that, please ask, but beware the Zoombinis for your ears. I never want to go back to pizza puzzle. Oh my, well, here we go. I'm sorry. Please, everybody, give a... Oh yeah, no problem about the volume issues. I actually think it is the funniest thing ever, so we're all good. Welcome to the the pulpit, everybody. Our friend Brian with your digital applause. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Brian, and I'm here to talk about a game that I failed to make, the premise of which was serving soup to angry old men. And it kind of all comes from a Seinfeld episode, so I thought I would start there.
George, I've just been reading this thing in the paper. It's unbelievable.
I know, I was just telling them the story.
Well, come on, George, finish the story.
The sea was angry that day, my friends. Like an old man trying to send back soup in a deli.
So if you've not seen that episode, it's called The Marine Biologist. It's one of the best. And that line has always stuck with me. I've seen this episode probably a dozen times now at this point. I just watch the show obsessively. But yeah, that line in particular about an old man sending soup back in a deli, an angry old man, has always stuck with me. And for some reason, it led to this, I'd consider it a minor obsession about this game, about serving soup to angry old men. And that was the basic genesis of the idea. And then I remembered that there was a game from my youth that I used to play called the Zoombinis. And I think a few people here will recognize this game. This is a series of kind of logic puzzles you would do with these Zoombini characters. I think there was something about you would lose Zoombini characters as you played, and you had to try and... It was almost like a Lemmings type of thing, sort of. Anyway, there was this pizza mini game, and I'll play this in a second, but the basic premise of the game is you have to serve pizzas to these three characters in the middle of the screen. And they each have some preference. So you have to find, there's probably just one pizza combination, there's ice cream as well, that'll satisfy all three of these people, these characters, I should say. And so let me just play this video quickly.
I'm really getting hungry.
And they're very annoying too. So you press these buttons on the left side of the screen and select the pizza toppings and ice cream as well. And then a Zoobini goes up and serves it to them.
Something's wrong. Uh-oh, there's something on that I don't want.
So they throw the pizza away and you try again with a different combination. So this is the basic premise of that. And so I thought this might make a good basis for the game. Kind of this logic puzzle. I imagine that it would be it'd be a video game. It'd be several old men coming into your soup restaurant that you own, and they each have a preference for soup, but they don't tell you until you serve it to them. So the soup might be too salty for customer A, and customer B might want something more creamy, but they're not going to tell you until you serve them. So it was sort of supposed to be a memory game and also kind of a restaurant management, time management game. And so the first thing I did is I sort of paper prototyped it. So these are my old men characters. I think did a Google image search for angry old men and found a lot of really good images of angry old men. I don't know why they're all white. That's just sort of what I found easily. Take that with what you will. But anyway, so this right here, this prototype was supposed to be they're spicy or too much salt or too much heat. And then there was also soup that you could serve that satisfied each of those properties. And so I think at the start of the game, it was a two-player game. One player would play the old man cards, and they would start with a preference of a type of soup they wanted. And then the other player would play the soup, and the old man player would respond with these cards that, it's too hot or it's too much salt. So that's the idea. We play tested it, me and my partner, and it wasn't very fun. The images were fun. The artwork was fun. But I also looked for the most disgusting looking soups I could find on Google image search, and these were them. I like a good tortilla soup, but that tortilla soup does not look good to me. So that was important, that all the soups look bad too. I don't know why. Anyway, it wasn't very fun. So anyway, probably, I don't know, a year later, I had another opportunity. I wanted to learn the Unreal Engine. And so I spent a day, this was a day-long prototype, of learning the Unreal Engine, and I was to say, hey, I'll try and make this soup game while doing it. So this is what I came up with. It's not impressive. I think I was trying to figure out how to make the character pick up the bowl of soup. I was learning how the Unreal blueprints work. I'm an engineer by trade, so I'm used to coding, and the blueprint system was something that was a little bit difficult to wrap my head around. Anyway, this is what I imagined the game would look like. Is why I wanted to show this. Is you kind of be this character here running around the store. And the old men character would be represented by the middle of the screen there, with the character in the chair, would be sitting down waiting for soup. And you would have various soups you could go pick up on the left and deliver to them. And more old men would come in, and the game would kind of be a balance of serving them in as fast as you can and maybe minimizing the amount of soup that they would throw the soup at you because they're angry. So it'd be mechanics around that. But I never really got this off the ground. I think the concept is maybe more funny than it would be fun. I still would like to make it in some form, but for the time being, I think I'm going to lay it to rest. Thank you for your time. This is my contact information. If for whatever reason you want to share a story about old men and soup with me or anything else, be happy to hear it. Thanks, and yeah, go eat some soup.
Oh my god, I just read in the chat, no soup for old men, and I am so here for that. Brian, thank you so much. Clap, clap, clap. I love the levity that you bring in, and I really, really love that you covered your inspirations and were able to show us these examples. That is so, so fun. That's awesome. Also, awesome to have you back, Brian. If anybody is interested in learning about productivity methods, our friend Brian, again, here in the chat, and who just gave us this presentation, gave us a presentation on a 1-hour productivity method that he employs in his day-to-day creativity that you can check out on our YouTube channel. You might like it. I thought it was really, really fun. And I'm curious, Brian, you had mentioned that this concept of making this game was kind of more of an obsession for you. I'm curious if you employed the 1-hour production method or if you employed the 24-hour production method on going for this one. Excuse me, sorry. We need to give the soup game no soup for old men. I'm sorry. That is the nickname that I used to refer to this game by over the last couple of hours that I've known it. You have served us so well. You have brought Zumbinis back into the chat. You have brought George Costanza back into the chat. We miss you so much, and we hope that someday you will throw soup at people. You'll throw soup into the sky and it'll become stars. That's what it is. Yeah, I nailed it. I nailed it. Such a good eulogy for Soup Game. Yeah, thank you so much, Brian. That was very, very fun. A great amount of levity for this event, which not to say that getting serious isn't something that we're into. I think I'm so impressed by everybody's courage to be able to share what they had to say goodbye to and what they potentially failed at and everything like that. I think that's something. Actually, I'm going to bring this up super quick before we get started on our last presentation. Dylan, if you wouldn't mind posting a link for our virtual event survey. This event survey should probably take you, if you haven't taken it already, about 10 minutes to complete. We're really, really looking forward to feedback on our virtual events that we host here on Twitch and on Discord and everything else. So yeah, this is the first time that we've ever done Game Funeral. So even if this is your first event that you've watched with PIGSquad, we would really, really appreciate your feedback, because at least from what I'm seeing and what I'm reading in the chat, we're talking about flying star noodles. So it sounds like we got to have a Game Funeral again sometime. So any feedback that you can provide about this format that would make it better, or if you just really, really want to see it again, we would love to hear your feedback. So thank you. We do have one more presentation though, and to close us out this evening, as I said, our friend Marlowe, one of our organizers, has talked a little bit about her time in school as well in her presentation. So yes, we are going to, as she says, look back on her drawing skills from 5 years ago. We also see the 5 years ago haircut, the 5 years ago gameplay inspiration, or lack thereof. Dun dun dun. I can't say that yet. No spoilers. We are going to hear from Marlowe about her game, Margaret. Please give her a virtual round of applause.
Hello everybody, my name is Marlowe Doby and I'm a video game artist and designer, and I am going to be talking about a canceled video game project of mine titled Margaret's Blight, aka Baby's First Game. So, the year was 2015. I was an illustration student at Pacific Northwest College of Art in my last year. I realized like 5 minutes ago at this point that I wanted to make games, and I was tired all the time. As you can see by this photo of me wearing an emoji crown and having absolutely no joy on my face. At this time in my life, I had been a video game player all my life, but I didn't really think that artists were able to make video games, and was kind of coming to the realization that that was very incorrect, and I was more and more interested in using my talents to start making video games. So in my final year at PNCA, I had a thesis project, which is essentially just spending your last year at school proposing a project of your own creation that you then execute. And I was really interested in taking that time to really focus on dipping my toes into making video games for the first time. So the process kind of went like proposal first, which is the first semester where you work on the concept and work on the reason why you want to do it, and then you end the semester with a proposal presentation in front of a panel of faculty that pretty much explains why I want to spend the last 6 months of my education working on this project and why it's important. And after proposal, you go through creation, which is essentially just making the project, spending your time actually creating the thesis project that you proposed, and at the very end of that time is the defense, where you take all the work you've done and present it again to another panel and answer questions from the panel and from the audience at your presentation, speak for about 45 minutes on the project and why you made it, and all of that jazz. So the whole process was a year, but it was about 6 months working on the game project itself. So really quick, before I get into the project, I just want to go a little bit over why I wanted to make this project and the theory behind it, because that's a big part of the thesis project, is having really clear intention behind it. And the first bullet point here is that, unfortunately, at the time, Gamergate was in full swing. And for those of you unfamiliar, Gamergate was a really awful movement happening in around 2014-15 in the games industry that was essentially targeted harassment towards women in games. And you can read a lot more about that at your own risk, but that's kind of the long and short of it. So that was happening, and I was very aware of that. And there was a dialogue that was kind of growing around, why is the industry so hostile? Like, what kind of circumstances led to this? And I was really interested because of that in making a project that addressed stereotypes that face female video game characters in both story and character design. I was realizing that video games are a very effective medium for engaging with your audience, and in that way you can use the very medium that established bad tropes to also tear them down. So basically what that means is that throughout the history of video games, women have kind of had bad representation, and because you engage with video games as a player, you are engaging with these stories in which women are represented poorly. So you can really easily internalize the messages that are in these games as normal without even really realizing it, which kind of leads to a hostile environment in an industry. So because the games are so effective, they made these bad tropes really internalized in a lot of people, but they can also be used to internalize much more positive stories and more positive representations at the same time. And that's what I wanted to do. So I felt inspired by the admittedly bad circumstances around me to begin telling stories with games. And that's what this project was. So the basic story is that you play as Margaret, who is a badger warrior princess who fights with a villain and loses at first and gets encased in a crystal prison. But she quickly realizes that the crystal prison doesn't actually do anything to her. It just kind of follows her around. It's just an aesthetic curse, if you will. So you play the game as her, recruiting all of her friends to go and stop the evil wizard that put the curse on her and get rid of the crystal that's following her around. So the characters were probably the biggest part of this project for me. Princess Margaret, she's the badger in charge of the Forest Kingdom. Even though she's a ruler, she can be hot-headed when faced with adversity. However, she is very considerate of her people's needs and is always working to put aside her pride for the sake of her kingdom. So she's really tough physically, but also has a lot of traits that show she's very thoughtful and always working towards peace and thoughtfulness. And had a lot of fun drawing her a lot of different times. As you can see, there's many different iterations of her in this. Next up is Otis, who's the first character you would recruit in this game. He's the resident archer and sharpshooter because he likes to keep a healthy distance from his enemy. Otis is the first to experience fight or flight reactions and can be prone to witch hunt-like attitudes when faced with danger. Ultimately, though, he can easily be calmed by Margaret, who he looks up to as a role model, and he cares deeply for his partner Diane, who he works hard to protect despite his nature. And I actually forgot about this until I put this slide together, but his partner Diane is a potted cactus. So potted cactus and porcupine, a perfect match in heaven. Next up is Jill. Her eccentric nature can come across as long-winded or off-putting, but she is the most observant of the warriors, and her tendency to throw solutions at a wall to see what sticks can oftentimes get her and her allies out of sticky situations, but can also get her in a lot of trouble. She often uses her magical powers in ways that may not always be well advised. So Jill is essentially the wild card wizard character who's also a possum and is very nice and thoughtful. And then we have Grumble. He is a master of martial arts and paw-to-paw combat. Grumble has a flair for dramatics and likes to think himself as mysterious or elusive, despite his long-standing relationship with all the warriors. Grumble will oftentimes monologue, and he hardly acknowledges anyone besides himself. Nevertheless, he is a valuable ally who can handle himself well in a fight, and is the first to jump into battle in the name of honor and glory. So Grumble's a very mysterious, aloof warrior type, but he's a pug, which is arguably the least warrior-like animal that exists. And then the villain of the story is the wizard. The wizard here is just like kind of a generic entitled villain who wants to take over a kingdom. He's a little one-dimensional, but I particularly liked the antlers and hanging bottles with evil spirits off of the antlers. I think I'm going to use that again sometime. And then the setting was really big. The setting went through a lot of iteration as well. And I really kind of wanted to put it in this like cozy red wall kind of vibe with different sort of biomes. It was really interesting to me to explore kind of doing handmade textures and drawings and importing them and coloring them digitally. So everything you see here was drawn by hand and colored in Photoshop. And at the same time that I was really interested in making games, I was also really interested in like really exploring new and exciting aesthetics in games. And I felt like there was a lot of cool examples of really hand-drawn stuff that was looking great. So I wanted to kind of try my hand at that as well. And here's just some examples of some of the work I did. It was a mashup, kind of cute Redwall forest, but also Victorian architecture. So ostensibly a little Portland, which is probably what I was very inspired by. And here's just a couple of the different biomes you would globetrot across in the story that I was creating. And here's some of the characters that would live in the world. I think this actually informed a lot of my character design and what I wanted to do with character design, because I really like doing these kind of like off-kilter, wacky characters. And so all of the animals that lived in this world were like all different versions of like totally out there weirdos. So yeah, I got a lot of that going. And then, yeah, so the basic idea of addressing these tropes and how they were addressed in this game, there was a lot of different ways, but just some examples. is that it was important for me that the story would use very common motifs, imagery, and tropes from video games that would set up players' expectations and then would, in execution, effectively turn them on their head. So the main one being the crystal prison is actually a very, very common trope in games to encase women in crystals for some reason. I have some examples you may be familiar with in this slide. There's Zelda, there's Shala from Chrono Cross, and there's literally the character named Crystal from Star Fox. Games have this obsession with trapping women in crystals, and I was aware of that and knew that it was very recognizable, so I wanted to do that to my character, but essentially have it not affect her at all. And the idea being that she is kind of renouncing the stereotypical role that she is being given in a video game. Another example of that in the top right that I have here is this like wizened tree character that I made. And this kind of like an archetype in video games to have this wise tree character, but this one was a turtle and it was worshipped by this jungle tribe and gave like very, very bad advice all the time. So it was kind of just like a play on that. And another one I explained earlier at the bottom of this slide was Diane the potted cactus. I wanted to have her reveal kind of be that you had to go help Otis save his partner and you would assume you were going to go save a damsel in distress, but it was actually a potted cactus the whole time. So just stuff like that, like really playing with expectations of what kind of already exists in video games and approaching them in a new way that makes you realize that, oh, I was really expecting this to happen a certain way because I'm kind of pre-programmed from all of the stuff I've already seen in games and the tropes I'm aware of. So my thesis defense, like I mentioned earlier, was at the end of the kind of creation phase. I took everything I worked on and kind of threw it on a wall, as you can see in these photos, and gave my 45-minute talk and answered questions. I kind of blacked out. I don't remember what I said, but people told me I did great. So I'm gonna stick by that. But yeah, I did a lot. I did a lot of drawing, probably more drawing than I've ever done in my whole life for any project. It was great. I really got to experience like what it is like to design an entire world and a story and themes and all the different parts of games that you can get those themes across in, and how they can all kind of work together. So it's pretty much the crux of my thesis project was creating a 32-page pitch Bible, which basically had all the information about the game in it, all the characters I designed, and everything I've kind of talked about, but more in depth. And the idea being that I could use this document to pitch this concept to someone to give me funding or help me make the game or something like that. It was very in-depth, but it was a very fun thing to kind of create and have. So why the game died, you may have noticed that I hadn't talked about gameplay yet, and there's a reason for that. Gameplay kind of ended up being an afterthought, which was not a great way to approach a holistic project. I kind of came up with this idea that I wanted it to be a puzzle platformer. Because it was my first game, I think I fell into this trap of, oh, it needs to be a platformer because that is the type of game that people who make games make, and it's the easiest, right? And anybody who's made a platformer can tell you it is not the easiest type of game to make. It's actually very difficult to do really well. So I had all these ideas about like, you would have your crystal on your character and there would be other crystals in the environment and you could walk through different ones depending on what colors they were, and you could hit switches to change the colors and all that kind of stuff. And like the idea that some enemies would be changing the color of those crystals and you'd have to solve all these puzzles and everything. And then on the very right of this slide is kind of where it just blew wide open, and I was like, what if it's a puzzle platformer? But it's also pretty much a fighting game. So I did all these drawings and concepts for like different stances you could take with your attacks and like summoning the different warriors to come help you for special moves and stuff. And like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to do that now, like 5 years later. So I can't believe I was thinking I was going to be able to do that. Here's some examples of like some of the work I did. I worked on it a little bit after my thesis, and was trying to sort of like make the assets and make it a game and stuff. And I think it looks great. And I had I did have a lot of fun, like, going over platformer design and, like, studying some stuff and really thinking about, like, player intention and how to make things fun and all of that. But I think the thing I really just ran into is that I do not like platformers. This is something I've actually really realized recently and didn't know back then, but I think now I understand is the reason why I stopped working on this game, is because I hate platformers. It is just not my type of game, and I don't know why I thought it would be fun to make one or play one that I was making or anything. I just did not have the inspiration for it, and it was not my jam. And the idea of making it a puzzle platformer was so intrinsic to me that I think it kind of just like fizzled out because I didn't want to make a platformer. And the second reason is that it was just too big. I think it was really valuable to spend that amount of time just pretty much being able to live in ideas land. And the result was too many ideas. I think it's a really ultimately cohesive like world and story and characters and everything, but it's just far too big of a project for one person to take on, especially starting out and especially as your first game. So I think I didn't really know about game jams, and I didn't know that, oh, I should start with game jams and learn the basics of how to make a game and all that kind of stuff before I go into my Final Fantasy 12 sized narrative that I want to tell with all these like character interactions and secrets and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I really like all the ideas in it, but it is just too much for one person to take on. So in closing, will I ever pick it up again? The answer is probably not. I think there's too much that needs to be figured out with it, although I really, really like a lot of parts of it. The biggest thing being like, it has to have good gameplay if it's going to be a game, and it has to be the type of game that I'd be inspired to make. And I'm realizing that I was working on a project that is not the type of genre that I'm interested in making. So I think if I were going to pick it up again, I'd try to figure out some way to like repurpose it as like an RPG or maybe just a straight up puzzle game. But until, you know, that beautiful inspiration hits, I can't see that happening. But I did learn a lot from working on this project. I learned a lot about building an IP, which is essentially what I do for work now. And it was great to kind of, you know, realize that there are a lot of aspects that go into making a game and being able to spend time to think about those to different degrees, but really think about how gameplay can influence your theme, how narrative can influence your theme, how character design can influence your theme. Like they can all work together. Yeah, I just found that really inspiring. Iterative character design is something I never did before this project. I don't think I ever drew the same character twice. And as you could see in some of the character slides, like they did go through a lot of different tweaks and all that kind of stuff. So I think I ended up a lot better as a character designer for actually having an opportunity to really work on the same characters over and over and over again over a long period of time. Because I think the characters did improve, and I think my practice really improved. I realized games are an effective storytelling medium and that I really wanted to tell stories with them. So that's a huge thing. Like it's pretty much the reason why I still want to make games and I'm still inspired to do it. And I kind of took away this idea of wanting to broaden players' understanding of the world through visual design. Specifically with character design, I think there's a lot of archetypes and tropes that are easily readable by an audience, but being able to work outside them or push the envelope of them or nudge them in a certain direction, or, you know, not make your female characters have eyelashes to signify that they're female, like stuff like that, it's an important part of sort of my character design. And I think about that a lot, just trying to see what kind of variety you can get players to accept. So yeah, that's kind of all what I take with me. This game was also the reason I started coming to PIGSquad events, because after my thesis proposal, my panel asked me if I had ever heard of PIGSquad and suggested I go to an event. So thank you for that. And PIGSquad is the reason why I figured out I have to start small first and work my way up towards making games. So yeah, this was kind of the catalyst for me getting into making games, which is great. And I think that this kind of world and these characters and every aspect of this will always be in my back pocket as maybe something to pick up one day, but very likely I'll be using aspects of it and kind of cannibalizing it for different projects that I work on more recently. So yeah, it's kind of this like well that I can always draw on for ideas, which is great. And I think that's a really good thing to take from a project that gets canceled, essentially. So that's all I have. I'll leave you with this drawing I did actually just a couple months ago of Margaret and Otis, because I do think about them sometimes. And it's kind of fun to see their most recent iteration, so to speak. But yeah, that's all I got. Thanks so much for listening. See you later.
Alrighty, clap, 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 please. Thank you so much, Marlowe. That was so fun to watch. That was another project I've seen a little bit. I saw that thesis defense and hadn't seen the beginnings of it, but so cool to revisit it. And I mean, I always forget how well the themes sync up, and I love that idea of perspective and calling attention to tropes that we see in video games and turning them on their head, or making them feel mundane, such as this crystal is a burden rather than something that is going to totally lock me away. Like, I think that's such a great idea, and I think that's a great way to start a big base, like you said. Learn how to create an IP, and then eventually look back and steal from yourself. I saw a lot of people in the chat say like, "Oh yeah, we need to steal from ourselves if we keep making and we try our hardest and we move forward and we feel good about putting things behind us that we don't want to explore anymore, then we can still use aspects of those." I think that was, of course, a common thread in everybody's presentations this evening, but I think that was a good way to bring it full circle as our last presentation. Thank you. And, you know, Margaret, we will, of course, probably hear from you again very soon when Marlowe gets you and all of your friends out of the closet and takes a photo of you, aka all of the plushy versions of yourself. This may be next week. This may be in 2 years when you are found again in the closet. But regardless, we are so appreciative of your message, and we are so happy to have revisited you in this game funeral. So thank you for what you do for us. You're among the stars now, you know. No longer in the woods. We're out of the woods, everybody. Come on. Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you so much. Let's flip from the F's and get to the claps again for everybody who presented this evening. You all did such an amazing job, and my only regret is that we weren't able to host you in person. But because, of course, due to the pandemic, we are going to be doing a lot of streams instead for our events. And already I've heard a lot of feedback about wanting to hear from other voices. And I think, boy, oh boy, this was a great way to cover all of that. Marlowe had this idea talking with Corwyn, who did a presentation earlier, to try out what Game Funeral would look like, the idea of putting your old games to rest, and of course this, very, very happy for moments like this. But yeah, thank you so much for providing that feedback and then being a test run. I mean, I think this was a very, very successful, yes, seance. It is a seance, it is a concept. Yeah, for sure. There's exactly as you're saying, there's a lot of love and catharsis here, and I think that is so exciting. We'll definitely have to do this again, and remember that in the future, we have a lot of events on our calendar. The Game Funeral, we are here on Thursday, so in 2 days from now, we're actually going to get together in the Discord. They're usually really small, chill co-working sessions where we share our screens. And actually, Discord just did an update last week, or even earlier this week, I forget. Very, very, very recent, where everybody sharing their screen at the same time will be a lot easier and a lot more effective. We'll be able to actually see things stream in better quality and live and everything like that. So if you're interested in popping in to say hi, You're also totally fine to not show your camera or mute yourself or lurk or any of those kinds of things, but I think a lot of people will typically be muting ourselves and maybe showing face cam, but mostly focusing on anything that we're working digitally, whether that's writing or art or audio or anything like that. Yes, 100%. If anybody from Seattle wants to join, please do. I should also say, when we are talking about things like future talent talks or future game funerals, this is not restricted to just Portland. That also goes for things like our game jam. We have the horror game jam going right now. That'll end on the 30th. We have a lot of people from out of town who are participating, and a lot of people who we know and have interacted with before in Seattle or elsewhere participating as well. So please feel free to participate in our events. PIGSquad's a nonprofit community platform for anybody. We are just based in Portland is pretty much the thing. And it gives us our great acronym, which gives us cute pig, PIGSquad, Portland Indie Game Squad. So yeah, anyways, we have more coming up. The Talent Talks for September, we have a lot of really cool people presenting there. That's on September 7th. If you are potentially interested in giving a presentation, I would maybe ask to hold up for those of you who presented this evening so that we usually try to kind of cadence who is presenting and everything like that. But even still, if you have an idea and when you want to share a learning moment or tutorialize a tool that you really like, talk about a method that keeps you productive, talk about a game that you're working on, talk about a game that you made in the past, any of those kinds of things, please hit us up because we would love to help you share your message. And I think a lot of people are realizing more and more that their perspective is sometimes a lot more important than their expertise. And I would agree with that. And I think we have seen a lot of people tonight even who were able to share work from so long ago when they were just starting and say, this is what I thought, and now I know so much more, but look at how worth it was for everybody here. Really, really cool. Yeah, rip to all the games, but this was great. Thanks for joining us. I think, let me see if there's anything else going on here. If anybody's participating in the jam and wants to form teams still, it's not too late. Our Discord's a good place for that. Also, sharing a little bit of your work on Twitter and then tagging PIGSquad is a great way to call out for teammates because we can retweet you. And then also organizers will know what you're looking for and we might be able to pair you up. We've been having a couple people post and say, I'm looking for a musician. And then 2 days later, somebody will say, I'm a musician. And then it's like, yep, easy to pair people up and work together. But I think that's it. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. This was really, really cool. Again, as a new event style and welcoming some people who have never presented with us before. Cesca, as we said, is not in Portland yet. And as I said to you earlier, that anybody is welcome from any locale to present or be a part of the community, because our goal is to help people make games in safe environments and do cool stuff and learn cool new things. And that's always the goal of things like our game jams and our events and our co-working nights and everything like that. So anyways, yeah, just for tonight, we will say You Are With the Stars Game Funeral. But Game Funeral will be back. And thank you so much, everybody, for participating. This was amazing. Talk to you very soon. Have a good night.